The rise of the Lifesteal SMP has brought light to an entirely new concept of survival multiplayer. Having an SMP full of content creators has already been done, but adding lifesteal and creating a trend of coming up with clever ways to trap others is what made it pop off and do exceedingly well in the Minecraft YouTube community. In fact, it did so well to the point where it inspired the creations of other well-known SMPs you may know. One of these SMPs is the Awaken SMP, a hardcore SMP where you can die to natural causes and respawn, but if you die to a player, you drop your head and can't respawn until your head is placed down by them. This twist, along with the trapping trend, intrigued thousands of people who wanted to see how these traps would be executed with a twist like that. Using the same formula the Lifesteal SMP used worked out in the Awaken SMP's favor, because almost everyone in the SMP has over 1,000 views on the video, or just has that amount overall. With these accomplishments and the plethora of videos the SMP has to offer, it's easy to forget where it all even started. That's why, in this video, I'll explain the origins of this SMP in a quick recap, and then talk about the members' origins and their place in the SMP. Timestamps for the story and the members will be available when you watch, just in case if you want to skip ahead at any point in the video, although I'd appreciate it if you watch the whole way through. Without further ado, this is the lore of the Awaken SMP. With the official start of the SMP, everyone was trying to get as stacked as possible, as soon as possible. This resulted in some fights between some of the members at the start. The first fight being between Maou and NathanLive. They fought between a ruined portal at spawn, with a chest that had 2 enchanted golden swords in it. Nathan took one, and Frank took one. And then they both had an epic battle. Meanwhile, the other SMP members like CJL and Carvs worked together to get each other stacked, with Caleb being the first person to get diamonds. Branching out and finding structures like villages came with a cost, and that cost being that they might be invaded and raided if they were close to spawn. This was the case for Nathan, as Carvs had taken his villagers, which made him angry and led him to start a fight that would bring the start of the server's first war. This battle was a 3v1. The players, NathanLive, Yoshi, and Maou versus Carvs. Against all odds, Carvs managed to survive and escape, which made Nathan think that Yoshi and Frank weren't very good at PvP. A little while later, Nathan approached Redish, the leader of a team, and asked to join it. But in order to join, he would have to kill someone and bring back their head to prove his worth. So Nathan tricked Yoshi into taking off his armor and then killed him. After that, he brought his head back to Redish to prove that he was worthy of being on his team, and he was accepted in. Soon after that, they came across another member, SirSwagalishus. He asked to join their team, but as Redish did with Nathan, he gave Swag a challenge, to come back with the player's head so that they knew he was worthy of being on the team. This challenge would be rigged though, as Swag secretly made a deal with his friend McCartneyStan. The deal being that he gets his head in exchange for coordinates to his team's base. So he allowed him to take his head, making it seem like he took him down by force when really they were still working together. After this, Swag revived McCartney, and McCartney, wanting to be on the team, sent Carvs a message, letting him know that he had the base coordinates to Nathan's base. Carvs was skeptical of him at first, but when McCartney approached him and his teammates claiming to know where his enemies were at, they decided to go check it out, and it turned out that McCartney was right. So with McCartney now a part of the team, he and Carvs stayed up all night getting prepared for the ambush, and when the time was right, they went ahead and started the server's first war. It was a 4v3, and on one team, Carvs, McCartney, Bacon Waffle Zero, and CJL Caleb. On the other, NathanLive, SirSwagalishus, and Maou. Both Caleb and Carvs teamed up on Swag, while McCartney took on Frank, and Bacon took on Nathan. Nathan fled and hid in a pond, making Bacon lose sight of him. Swag and Frank would not be as fortunate as Nathan, because Frank was killed by McCartney, and Swag was killed by Carvs. This left Nathan as the last one to survive the war on his team, with him retreating to the Nether, but coming back after a compromise was made. Carvs and his team decided to spare Nathan's life, even though he had argued that Carvs stole his villagers. With that, Nathan had planned to revive Swag, but remembered that Carvs had his head. So after interrogating him, Nathan had met up with Carvs to get Swag's head back. But little did he know he was about to fall into his trap, as Carvs had dropped Swag's head on top of it. Nathan didn't trust it at first, but eventually went to go grab it, and that's when he fell into the trap. Unable to dig or mine his way out, he suffocated, as Carvs and his team just pointed and laughed. After he succumbed to the trap, he threatened Carvs, saying that he would remember this, and he would, as this trap started the chain of traps that the SMP members would pull on each other. With newer members joining, betrayals occurring, trickery, mockery, and more, one thing was for sure: trapping would be their way to stop all of it. And that was the lore of the Awaken SMP. Everything that comes after is a part of the SMP's developing plot. Now, originally, I was going to explain the entire plot all the way up to a certain date, but after seeing how many videos there are of the SMP, and how in every video there is someone else making a video in that video while their video is being done, I just decided not to, and instead, summarize the origin. Doing it this way makes it a lot easier on me, and makes it way less repetitive than explaining similar scenarios with the main focus being a trap. So now that we know the origin story, I'll move on to the origins of its members, in alphabetical order. First up on on the list is AgroMC. AgroMC is a Skyblock YouTuber who, according to the Awaken SMP Twitter, joined on the 4th of February. His appearance on the SMP has barely been shown, with him only appearing on another member's channel. This member, Minnox, had threatened him to give him information for his video, and Agro obliged. After this, we don't really get to see much watch time from him on the SMP. Yes, I know he made his own video on his channel that was SMP related, but if you look at some key details, you could tell it's not the Awaken SMP, even though it has some members from it. Agro, in general, has been really inactive on the SMP, and it might stay that way, but only time will tell. Bacon Waffle Zero was one out of the 6 people who were on the Awaken SMP from the start. He was the first person on the SMP to start a team when he teamed up with his friend CJL. Together, they recruited Carvs, and eventually McCartneyStan too. With Bacon and his team, they went to war, and as we know by now, they won. For Bacon, he wasn't as interested in doing traps every video just as every other SMP member was. Instead, after the war, he mainly focused on protecting his pets or just trying to acquire some. And I'm sure that if he keeps it up, he'll be more known for his love of pets than his traps. The real Carvs, or Carvs, is the current owner of the Awaken SMP. With the launch of the SMP, Carvs told the first 5 people to
make content, have fun, make this the best server ever, and let's all grind, okay?
It makes sense that Carvs was the one to start the first war because he's the owner. He's the one who made the rules and he can start whatever he wants to. Not only that, but just as I mentioned earlier, he was the one to start the chain of the SMP members trapping each other. It's no wonder why he's the mastermind of the server. With Carvs managing both the server and its Discord, he can ultimately decide who can and who cannot come back onto the SMP, and that was a privilege he would not let go to waste. CJL Caleb was a part of the number that was on the SMP the day it launched. His focus was being the most stacked player on the server, and as you could probably tell, this wouldn't be easy to achieve. At the start, he made his first accomplishment when he became the first person to get diamonds on the SMP. After that, he came across a village, which he used to his advantage, getting more stacked and closer to his goal. Along the way, he would meet Bacon, who he would team with for the server's first war. Caleb wouldn't be that active until after the war, where he went on to design traps for his videos. Now, I was going to interview him and ask him some questions, but yeah, never mind. This next person, I feel like only a little amount of you know, so I'll give a little background information. Danzey was originally a Bed Wars YouTuber who ran 4 channels. Danzey Edits, Danzey Shorts, Danzeys, and Danzey. The channel he's currently the most active on is Danzey, where he recently uploaded a video on the Awaken SMP. He was invited into the SMP and joined a day after AgroMC. His origin is unknown, and unless you're an Awaken SMP member, you don't really ever know the exact time he joined, what he did, and how he got stacked. But I figure if that's the case, he probably just played on the SMP for a while, keeping to himself and not getting involved with any of the members in their drama. At least until he jumped onto the SMP bandwagon, where I'm sure he's not going anywhere else anytime soon. DrDonut doesn't have a well-known origin story in the SMP, even though he has his own YouTube channel, as his channel focuses entirely on his own SMP, and I don't see a single video of the Awaken SMP on it. The only way he's shown in the SMP is through other members' videos, like McCartneyStan. From these videos, I came up with a synopsis. DrDonut was McCartneyStan's enemy, and they were enemies even before coming onto the SMP. Being on the opposite team on the SMP made it worse, as DrDonut was on Nathan's side and McCartney was on Carv's side. Although DrDonut wasn't around when the server's first war happened, he would only start causing trouble after the war. So this leads me to believe that DrDonut joined the SMP after the war happened, getting recruited by Nathan and going against Carvs and his team, which also just happened to have McCartney on it. Acknowledging that gave him more of a motive to wreak havoc, and he would. DylPickle, or Dylan, was invited into the Awaken SMP by CJL, and when he joined, everyone on the server was already stacked. This meant trouble, as he could have lost his head if he didn't get stacked soon, even though he had a 24-hour grace period. With the untrustworthy help of Nathan, and then the trustworthy help of Caleb, he managed to survive. After that, he would work as a spy for Caleb, spying on the enemy team and giving Caleb intel on what their plans were. Dylan had a rough start, mainly because he almost died the moment he joined, but as you will see later, he wouldn't be the only one to face this problem, and he certainly would not be the last. Maou was a part of the group of people that were on the SMP from day one. He isn't really involved with the Awaken SMP's plot, with his origin story being the only notable thing about him. It's unfortunate, I know, but to put it short, Frank started off fighting with Nathan before going away to do his own thing. At one point, he teamed up with him and Yoshai to take down Carvs, but as Nathan said, they weren't the best at PvP. Because of this, when the SMP's first war took place, he was the first one to go, being killed by McCartneyStan quickly due to not having enough armor to withstand his attacks. Leaving it up to Nathan to revive him, he waited. And that's pretty much it. If you want to know what happened after, basically he did get revived, but as I said, he isn't as involved as much as he was before the war. It's a sad situation, but recently he was in a Leomafrogo video, so there's still some hope for retribution. But for now, it is what it is. Jepex was invited into the Awaken SMP by Nathan, and he was cautious when he joined. He would only get on the server when the other stack members were on, and he would grind for a little and then log off, staying under the radar. This was a good method to avoid bumping into the wrong person, and would help him out in the long run, because as I mentioned earlier, Dylan got ambushed at the start. If he had used Jepex's strategy, he wouldn't have had a rocky start. Speaking of ambushes, Jepex faced the same problem when he was requested by Nathan to log on at a certain time. When he did, he got ambushed by Nathan and his entire squad. Like, come on Caleb, you're helping Nathan target a new player in full iron. And even with that, Jepex still managed to escape, and later came up with a plan to trap Nathan. With that, Nathan had made a new enemy, and would soon come to regret doing it. Jackson was one of the many SMP members to join after the war, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't know much about his origin. The closest thing I have to that is a mention of him being a new member by Nathan in his Netherite zombie video, where it's shown that Jackson is in full diamond. It doesn't look that new, but he isn't wearing any Netherite in this clip, so I believe it. If I were to guess how he got that way, I would say he went through the same process Danzey did. This meant that he would distance himself from the other members until he was ready to make his own content on the SMP, and eventually, he did, and has been dropping bangers since. Lenuxx joined the SMP around the same time another member, Redish, did. He started out by teaming with him. They both worked together and helped each other get stacked. Along the way, they recruited some other SMP members like Nathan and Swag. Lenuxx, wanting to get stacked, found McCartneyStan's base and would start to steal from it daily. One day, McCartney, wanting to find out who was stealing from him, approached the Discord server, telling people to come to his base for a chest with loot in it. After seeing someone come to his base, he found out that the thief was Lenuxx, wanting to get stacked just like his team had been doing. McCartney didn't like this, so he trapped him and killed him. Lenuxx was able to get most of his stuff back when he got revived by Swag, but still, he wanted revenge. He would make McCartney pay for killing him, even if it meant doing some risky things. Leomafrogo is a friend of McCartneyStan, and he tried desperately to get onto the Awaken SMP. It took a while, but after some convincing, he was finally invited onto the SMP. His start was rough, because since he was the newest member at the time, he had to do what the other members said, or else they would kill him. Leo was tired of being submissive and breedable, so after doing some research by watching the other SMP members' videos, he came up with a trap idea. He went ahead to execute it, even though doing this was risky, because he was still new, which meant that if anyone felt like it, they could kill him. In fact, that's what Swag almost did, but because he felt bad, he stopped before Leo could die. After taking Leo's helmet, Swag left, and this upset Leo, but he continued working on his trap. Over time, Leo would get more stacked, as he got a better helmet, totems, and more. When the time came, he set the trap into motion, showing everyone that he wasn't weak anymore. And I'm pretty sure that they all got the memo. McCartneyStan is one of the most well-known Awaken SMP members. He joined the SMP when everyone was just starting to get stacked. This allowed him to build a base before anything major happened. After he had built his base, he was approached by his friend SirSwagalishus, who had made a deal with him for his head. McCartney trusted Swag, and because of this, he got his team's base coordinates. With these coordinates, he contacted Carvs and told him about it, and after proving himself, joined their team for the server's first war. After the war, McCartney would focus on making traps for his enemies, one of them being DrDonut, who had been his enemy for the longest time, even outside of the SMP. With his traps, he could bring an end to DrDonut and keep him off the SMP for good. And so that became one of his goals, a goal that he planned to achieve soon. Minnox is an SMP member who joined the day before AgroMC did. There's very little known about his origin regarding what happened the day he joined and what he did. All that's currently known about him is that he's MintGB's teammate, and they built a base that had been destroyed multiple times. He's in some other SMP members' videos along with his own, but those don't really give details of how he got started. So because of this, I'll just take the same approach I did with Danzey and Jackson, as it just seems more logical. I will also just say the same with MintGB, because the only fact we get about his origin is that he joined the day before Minnox. With Yoshai, there is barely much information about him other than the fact that he was on the Awaken SMP when it began, and that he got killed by Nathan and disappeared from the SMP entirely. Everything after their origin gives us a clearer image, but doesn't allow us to take a look back to see where they came from. It's a problem for those who want to see how they began, but it'll just have to stay that way. That is, unless you ask them personally, which is also an option. NathanLive was, at one point, the owner of the Awaken SMP. He was the owner along with Carvs, and they both made the rules together and controlled the server. Nathan, being one of the 6 people to be on the SMP the day it launched, got a head start, and took advantage of that by spying on Carvs. He stalked him all the way to his base, where he would later take him on in a 3v1. But, as he should know by now, it didn't end well for Nathan, because Carvs escaped. After this, Nathan approached Redish and asked to join his team, but as you've heard earlier, he needed to kill someone to prove himself. Nathan, taking into account that Frank and Yoshai were bad at PvP, killed off Yoshai and brought his head back to Redish to show him that he was worthy of being in his team. With this team and the recruital of SirSwagalishus, he was able to get more stacked. Everything was going fine until the first war, which ended up in the loss of his teammates, leaving him the sole survivor on his team. With that, he was angry at Carvs and wanted to get revenge. He would move forward to do so after getting trapped by him. Nathan, but most notably Carvs, started the SMP's trend of traps, with both of them getting revenge on each other for content. Something I feel like I need to mention real quick is what I said about Nathan being the owner. Yes, he was the owner at one point, but after I had a conversation with one of CGL's mods, I found out the true story. Carvs and Nathan were the owners together, but Nathan did something to upset Carvs, and this thing led Carvs to kick Nathan out of the Awaken SMP completely. Now, I don't know what he did, but in order to avoid conflict, I won't attempt to do any research, find out, and tell you all, unless Carvs is fine with it. So, with Nathan gone, Carvs is left as the SMP's only owner, and I have a feeling it will stay that way. RedishLive, or Redish, is originally a YouTube Shorts creator, and he joined the Awaken SMP not long after it started. With another SMP member, Lenuxx, he created a team where he would recruit other members if they completed his challenge, to kill someone and bring back their head to show them that they are worthy of being in the team. He gave this challenge to two people, NathanLive and SirSwagalishus, and they both completed it, which added to his team. Now, Redish isn't as active as Nathan and Swag, which is why he didn't show up when they got ambushed in the SMP's first war. It was only when he was requested by CGL that he got into the SMP. Caleb told him that he needed help for a thumbnail, and so Redish helped him out. Little did he know, this kind act would turn into a disaster, as Caleb trapped him and he died. Redish didn't decide to get his revenge until a couple of months later, when Caleb wasn't going to expect it. And to say the least, he didn't. SirSwagalishus, like Redish, is known for his YouTube shorts, although he does have a YouTube channel for the SMP. Swag joined the SMP around the same time McCartneyStan did, and he kept to himself as he grinded for items. One day, he came across Redish and his team. Seeing how friendly they were, he decided to ask them if he could join their team. As I said earlier, he was accepted into the team after completing the challenge Redish had given him. The challenge being that he had to kill someone and bring their head back in order to join, and he did, faking it with McCartney, whom he had killed but revived later. This challenge had cost the team's base coordinates, which eventually led to the SMP's first war, which started when Swag and his team were ambushed by Carvs and his team. Swag, being 2v1'd, died, and after being revived, wanted revenge. He would do this by brewing hundreds of instant damage potions to kill his enemies with. He would make sure that they would regret even starting the war in the first place. And with that, I've explained the entire lore of the Awaken SMP and its members. If you like this video and want to see more, let me know. If I made any mistakes or missed anything, let me know that as well. I originally made this video for anyone who wanted to know what the Awaken SMP was about but never actually got the chance to catch up on the series. If you're one of those people, I encourage you to go watch their videos, as most of the footage I use in this video is from them. Speaking of SMPs, if you want me to summarize the lore of other SMPs, let me know. I already have a few in mind, but you could still suggest some to me. Alright, thanks for watching and have a good day.